Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of the Rush Hour podcast. We have a very interesting update with the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively lawsuits going on today. We're waiting for Blake Lively's amended complaint. It could be extremely juicy. It could be a big nothing burger. We're waiting ambitiously on the edge of our seat to see what that is all about. But in the meantime, we can barrel scrape a very interesting interview that happened yesterday, that being Billy Bush interviewing Justin Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman. I was surprised how hard Billy Bush went in on Blake Lively. You know, he's still industry adjacent. He's got corporate funding. Whenever there's somebody who works for the man or the, corporate Hollywood, you wonder if are they going to take a side. Well, he took a side. Billy Bush, no stranger to being canceled himself, goes into great defense of Justin Baldoni. I'll share with you where I agree and where I disagree. Not that anybody asked for my opinion, but here we are. And we'll get into that. I want to personally thank you guys for making yesterday our most successful day on YouTube ever. 370 plus thousand views. Unbelievable. Thank you for continuing to share with your friends, tagging me in new stories and getting us new information, whether it be on TikTok or Instagram at DNeils. We really appreciate you. Even the podcast is growing over there, so you can scan the QR code to get all of the morning and afternoon entertainment news. We appreciate that. Rush Hour with Dave Neal. So let's dive into it. I'm going to share 4 different clips of what was said. It was a pretty good interview. We shared a little bit on the Morning Rush where Brian Friedman actually said, thank God for the YouTubers like Candace Owens, but I think he meant to say Dave Neal, but whatever. She can get all the credit. That's fine. We'll get all the views for a small channel at least. So either way, now we've got moments where Billy Bush mentions Liz Plank, which is super interesting because it's kind of like a tertiary part of the story. Liz Plank, of course, ditches Justin Baldoni as his podcast host when the allegations come out. And again, I don't blame anyone who initially bailed because that New York Times article was pretty deafening. I mean, it was damning, right? It was hard to read the screen grabs and think there was any story that could have spoke to them. But of course, people who have done their research, for the most part, have changed their opinion. So anyhow, I'm going to share that. And then at the very end, we're going to share what Billy Bush said. I'm telling you right now, he came hard for her. Probably, maybe that's a bad choice of words. But either way, it's probably the strongest any public figure has struck down. That's not just like some random YouTuber like me. So I'm going to get into it right now. We'll play the first clip where he discusses Liz Plank, which to me was like, oh shoot, this guy's been doing his research. Have a listen.
Donnie, I'm back. I'm stepping away from the podcast, given the light of what we've learned here. Brandon Sklenar, who's the other male lead, I guess, in It Ends With Us, he supports Blake in the beginning. He unfollows Baldoni. Just this morning, he seems to have moved to neutral. He is now, they're asking him, are you team Baldoni or are you team Lively? He says, I'm team the movie. I have a friend who went through this. He is now completely backed away. And there are these HR complaints that are circulating around social media, alleged complaints, that say there are 2 other women on the cast who also had situations with Justin that were no good. One saying, oh, he grabbed my butt while he was helping me in a scene. And the other one, just not good. But they're heavily redacted. And what I understand is that these were circulated to major news organizations and they did not go with it. They decided not to run it for fear of defamation, I'm sure, for fear of you and defamation. So they didn't run it. But some of these TikTokers have done it. It's out there. Do you have any information as to how this got out there? And is this slander? Is this something you're looking into?
I think we're looking into everything. It's interesting. Let me ask you, what are the dates of these HR complaints?
What's interesting here is Brian Friedman, of course, is following all of the same Twitter accounts that we are because he knows that the dates were redacted. So by asking that, he knows, hey, how am I supposed to fight these things if we don't even know what there is to do with them? I think if there was anything, I think if Brian Friedman was worrying in any way about these HR complaints, he wouldn't be discussing this publicly right now. This isn't some random YouTuber. This is the attorney who's in the center of multi-$100 million lawsuits. So I think he's just not flinching over them. And again, as we showed, Sony said there were no complaints. So let's go to 2025. This is what's interesting. Today is supposed to be a big day. I mean, I am ready to go to talk about these amended complaints. They just haven't showed up yet. So at the 2025 mark, we've got the discussion of these complaints about to come out.
Now, where Blake's legal team has gone, they have an amended complaint, right? They went to the judge and said, we need to amend our complaint. We want some time. I think the judge said, you're not taking a ton of time. You can have until Monday. Well, that's today. Maybe it's tomorrow because, it's President's Day. But apparently their team is coming with an amended complaint. What does that mean? I assume they're still going to have the allegations of harassment, and they're not going to, downplay it more than that. Do you have any idea what's coming your way in that?
Not really. I mean, amended complaints happen all the time. People change their complaints all the time. Rarely do you see, though, people change the complaint to such a degree that you change your story completely. So, my assumption would be the story will be similar. And there may be things that are additive to it, but it feels like things that we saw last night, things that asking for a broad range of discovery. Look, when you ask for every document for 2.5 years, you as a lawyer should know that that's inappropriate. A lot of people could think that they're waiting for a response, and that our response would be to object to that, and they would then make a statement in the media saying, oh, look, they don't want the truth. Mr. Baldoni's team does not want the truth to come out. We actually want all evidence to come out that's proper and appropriate evidence.
All right, so that's where they're at. So they don't know what's going to be in the amended complaints either. Now, we did receive, there was a rumor that the amended complaint may up the accusation from harassment to assault, which we have no sort of reason to believe that will happen other than that rumor's been floating around. It probably will include Jed Wallace, as she's kind of got this other kind of lawsuit happening with him. But my guess is it'll be more technical than anything. But look, as a good Boy Scout, I've got my thumbnails ready to go. Check this out. I already made my thumbnail. That's not the one. There it is. Look, Blake's amended complaint right here. Now, that's not it. That's a different thing. But as a placeholder, I like to do my research. So as soon as this information comes out, your boy will be going live real fast. So stay tuned for that. All right, 2 more clips I want to share. Stick around. It's kind of starting to get interesting. I know Brian Friedman talks at a very slow and deliberate pace, but he needs to make sure he doesn't say things that can be used against him. Also, thoughts and prayers go to Brian Friedman's camera. It's been out of focus. It's been focused on this chair behind him the whole time, but even a blurry Brian Friedman looks good to me.
To do anything until
so now they're talking about the fact that he's declined mediation.
And whether we were open to that, our answer to that was no. We're not willing to do anything until Justin is cleared of being called a predator, of being called a sexual harasser. Until that is determined to have not happened, we will be doing this.
What is most important to Justin? The $400 million or some kind of financial settlement to make up for maybe lost work. Has he lost work? Has he lost have people backed away from him for a future project?
Of course. A substantial amount of work.
Really? Reminds me of Army Hammer, just like,
whew. All right, well, a little different. But, what you're going to see out of Billy Bush is that he kind of conflates a couple things here, and we have to be careful not to do that. We got to try to take every case as its own because they are different. 33 minutes in, he brings up Liz Plank one more time.
Baldoni, who does a podcast with a woman named Liz Plank about being a better man, about, what he's like. He calls himself a feminist. He wears the T-shirt. I mean, if this guy was a sexual harasser, it would be like, the Catholic Church scandal that happens. It'd be monumentally mind-blowing, of a takedown.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's the whole idea, right? If this is true, it's terribly hypocritical of him and ironic to make a movie about this. But again, he argues it's not. So here's the thing you guys tuned in for. This is Billy Bush kind of going hard in the paint, as it were, for, I guess, justice for Justin.
Thanks.
All right, my man. Final thought for me on Blake and Ryan for today. In response to Justin Baldoni's rigorous defense of himself and the $400 million defamation countersuit that Blake issues this statement. Just remember this. She said, "This is an age-old story. A woman speaks up with concrete evidence of sexual harassment and retaliation, and the abuser attempts to turn the tables on the victim. Accusing a man of sexual harassment is like the nuclear option. Right? It's a loaded proposition because it wipes that man out."
Well, there's worse things, but I understand the point. And this is where we're going to just pick this apart a little bit. There are worse things to accuse a man of, but it is very bad, especially if it's not true.
Right? 6-7 years ago, with the advent of the hashtag Believe Her movement or slogan, whatever it was, Blake might have been able to escape scrutiny on this one and just crush Baldoni. But too many others ruined it along the way. They proved that toxic femininity is just as real as toxic masculinity. It's toxic humanity, right? There's good people and bad people.
And then, okay, here's where I might lose some of you guys, but just respectfully, calling this toxic femininity or toxic mask, I reject all of those labels because we're talking about individuals here. To me, it's kind of like Billy Bush saying all lives matter. It's like, yeah, well, I understand the point. Like, there's toxic humanity. I understand the point, but this isn't a toxic femininity issue. When you call it that, you take it away from what it is. If Blake lied, it's an issue where, yes, she weaponized the belief others would have that she's the victim. Absolutely. But she would be a monster. It doesn't need a gender. It doesn't need a femininity or masculinity or any of that. But I understand the point. And I just say that because what you get when you cover these cases is a lot of people want it to fit their political agenda. So the agenda he was talking about, believe women, right? People took believe women and changed it to believe all women. And that changes things because that's not what it was. Believe women was an American political slogan arising out of the Me Too movement. It refers to accepting women's allegations of harassment and assault at face value. Again, it doesn't mean you don't check for evidence. It just says most people don't lie. And that's true. I'm sure some people comment, no, everybody lies. Most people don't. Most people don't have any reason to lie. When there is a reason to lie, you have to look into it. Sometimes it's monetarily. Sometimes it's for power reasons. Sometimes it's because you're embarrassed. There could be reasons why you lie about something. But I think you should believe people. And I understand how these catchphrases can be misused because then here you say, right here, it says criticisms and believe all women. So they changed it from believe women to believe all women, which, guys, words matter. You know what I mean? It's the same reason why defund the police was a sort of ineffective catchphrase, because the conversation is much more complicated. Well, we don't want to get money out of social services. We just think we shouldn't be killing people on the streets. Maybe we should be funding better mental health advocacy. Okay, so you have these conversations. But when you try to put everything onto a bumper sticker of a slogan, people will misconstrue it. Now, the question is whether they misconstrue it to fit their agenda or just because they accidentally got it wrong. But a lot of people that misconstrued believe women into believe all women are that kind of like legal type that just wants to put everything into into like an ultimate phrase. Like, well, if we're supposed to believe all women, then what about this scenario? And it's like, okay, listen, we're talking about in normal cases, people don't lie for any reasons. In this case with Blake Lively, she was believed. It worked out. And then her evidence didn't show up. Same thing that happened with Clayton's accuser, Laura Owens. She was believed and didn't work out. I think people should be believed, and I think that phrase comes because, and a lot of times you would report some abuse that happened, and cop would be writing it down, and he'd be like, "Well, what were you wearing?" You know, and that's not the conversation. That's Believe Woman was in response to that type of conversation. And if people can't have the critical thinking to understand the difference between that versus no one's giving blanket pardons to everyone, just say believe everything Blake Lively says. So it's true that Blake probably surfed the goodwill of being a victim here, but if she's lying, she's a monster. If she's lying. Billy continues.
No one's born with a set of chromosomes that make them, more predisposed to do evil. We've always known that. Does Blake still have time, though, to fall on the sword? Think about this. Did you, Blake, if you had a parent or a grandmother who taught you, about good and evil that lives inside of us, because we all have a bit of both, right? Can you channel them? What if she just says, look, I was desperate. I went past the point of return. I lost my mind. I listened to the wrong voices. I am so sorry.
I think that's the best thing for her to do. But Billy Bush is also under the assumption that she's lying, which a lot of people believe she is. But it's still a hard stance to take when we don't really know. Now, you can think all you want. I think the public is on the right side of this story, but it's still a very interesting stance to take.
If she did that, I would accept it. And I think Justin seems like the guy that he would accept it too. I say if you just in all situations, like if you do something terrible, just own up, say you're sorry, and let's forgive, because we all have that in us.
I agree with Billy Bush. We all have it in us. And I think it's such a great conversation to have, but we all have a little crazy in us. We've all got an ego. And it's how much we've inflamed that ego. So you look at Liz Plank or Blake Lively or whoever the hell you want to look at, and you see, well, they get a little dose of fame. They get some money, some power, some red carpet, someone to get their groceries and walk their dog, and they get, and all of a sudden that ego can grow. And you got to be careful about it, but people fly too close to the sun. It happens. And it's very hard to empathize with that if you're not in a position where you've had that ego grow. So interesting of Billy Bush here to take the side of saying, hey, I'd forgive her. And to be quite honest, I mean, if you're Justin Baldoni, obviously you want some money and some retribution, but what are you supposed to do other than once you get the truth, you'll be rewarded in one way or another. You can't turn back the time. You can't use one of those little neuralizers that they have from Men in Black. Although I wish I could. I wish I could use that for several situations in my life. Nope, don't remember that. But you can't do that. So I think Blake would be crushed if she admitted to it. But I also think she could work again. I do. We've had this conversation. She admits to it the way Billy did. Oh my gosh, I've been horrible. I've looked back all of these instances of people seeing that I was a dick, and I have done a lot of inventory and all of the pressures to succeed and blah, 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 blah. I'm going to go to a facility and just detox from my phone and relax. And 2 years later, she moms and does all of her stuff. 2 years later, she comes and does a cool movie, an art house movie, and she acts the hell out of it, and she gets humble. Yeah, I could see that happening. I don't think it will.
We all are predisposed to do the wrong thing. That's what life is. But we got to be able to forget, even now, and it is gone. I mean, it would be now, not immediately now. Get together and own up. If you can do it. All right. Thanks to Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's lawyer coming up. Oh my God, the Trumpster. Jeez. Woo! Does the good still outweigh the bad?
All right, so anyway, he moves on. I think it was interesting. And again, Billy Bush is someone to talk, right? He was canceled from NBC after essentially doing, and a lot of people don't want to even, this is another type of story a lot of people don't want to have, but you ever see that show on ABC where something bad happens, and it's called, what's the show called, What Would You Do? And you're forced to confront whether or not you would speak up and advocate for someone versus let something go. Well, I would be a Billy Bush type, where Trump was caught saying crazy things on audio in a off camera, right? And Billy Bush just laughed it off. That's what I would do. And I think it also takes a strong person to admit that. I'm sorry. I'm a people pleaser. The last thing I would do if I'm supposed to interview someone is push back on them when I'm supposed to just be there to fluff them up. I'm not Barbara Walters. This isn't 60 Minutes. It's entertainment news. That's what I would probably do. Would I criticize them afterwards? Probably. Does that mean I'm spineless? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that does. But I just looked at that scenario and go, oh my gosh, how crazy that in the Trump tapes, the only person that got fired was Billy Bush, and Trump's now president. So that's the world we live in. Yeah, Billy Bush. I mean, I think he eviscerated Blake Lively with what he just said there. I'd love to know your thoughts. We wait for the amended complaint. That's coming next.